Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any suggestions for us to make the channel better, please let us know. Now let's start with the story. My name is rewrote. I'm 48 years old. Been running night shifts at the warehouse in Bloomington for 12 years. You work a machine long enough, you know when it's dying. I was still tasting metal from the chemo when Ella walked into that hospital room. Her heels clicked against the floor like a countdown timer. "Aaron, we need to talk." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Outside, Minnesota snow pressed against the windows like it was trying to get in. Inside, the silence stretched between us like a frozen lake. She didn't sit down, just stood there, holding a manila folder. "I filed for divorce yesterday." The words hung in the air like smoke. I didn't move, didn't blink, just watched her fidget with that folder like it held the deed to my soul. "What do you say to something like that?" I muttered. "Your wife of 16 years picks the day after your first chemo session to tell you she's done." She flinched slightly, just in the eyes, like the flicker of a light bulb before it burns out. "Timing like that doesn't just happen, Ella. I need to feel alive, Aaron." There it was. The line. I could hear it in her voice. Too smooth, too prepared. She'd practiced that in the mirror. Rehearsed it. Maybe even whispered it into someone else's sheets. I stared at her. "And you couldn't wait until I was dead." She looked away, jaw tight. I saw it then, the hesitation. Guilt? No, just calculation. How much should she say? How much had she already said? "Caleb thinks." She stopped. Too late. "Caleb Warren," I said quietly. "Your personal trainer." She didn't answer. 28 years old. Abs like you could crack walnuts on him. I met him twice. Called me sir. Shook my hand like he meant it. Her silence said more than anything she could have spoken. Guess what? He didn't. I still didn't say anything else. What was the point? When a machine breaks down, you don't argue with it. You just replace it. She set the folder on the bedside table. "The papers are in there. You should probably get a lawyer." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. For a second, I thought maybe she'd explain. Maybe she'd say why she couldn't wait just a little longer. Maybe she'd say sorry, or goodbye, or anything. Instead, she just walked out. Her heels echoed down the hallway until the sound disappeared completely. I sat there for 20 minutes after she left. The IV drip kept counting down one drop at a time. Outside, the snow kept falling. The nurse came back eventually. Young kid, probably fresh out of school, still had that new scrubs shine. She didn't look me in the eye when she removed the IV. Maybe she'd overheard. Maybe not. Didn't matter. "Do you need anything, sir?" she asked, her voice polite, practiced. "Just a ride home," I said. 3 days later, Ella moved out. Took her clothes, her books, her coffee maker. Left behind 16 years of marriage in a cardboard box of memories, a few photos I hadn't looked at in years, and a half-empty bottle of shampoo in the shower. That part stuck with me. Her shampoo. Like her scent didn't know it was supposed to leave too. By the end of the week, she was living with Caleb. Here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't hit you all at once. It seeps in slow, like water through a cracked foundation. First, you notice the cold. Then the damage. I went back to work that Monday. Same shift. Same routine. Same time clock that never cared whether I was happy, broken, or dying. The guys on my crew didn't say much. Word travels fast in a warehouse. They knew about the cancer. They knew about Ella. Nobody said a damn thing. That's blue-collar respect right there. You keep your head down and let a man break in peace. 2 weeks passed. Ella called once. "Hey," she said. Her voice sounded different. Lighter, like she'd been holding her breath for 16 years and finally let it out. "I just need to confirm some stuff for the insurance paperwork. You got a pen?" I asked flat. "Yeah." I rattled off what she needed. She jotted it down, thanked me. There was a pause, a silence that clung like static. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Still dying," I said. She hung up. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. Went through the old desk in the spare bedroom. Bottom drawer, under a stack of tax returns, was a folder I'd put together 18 months ago, back when I thought a heart attack might take me out at the warehouse. False alarm, turned out. Just a scare. But for 3 days, I was sure I was finished. That's when you learn who people really are, when they think you might not be around much longer. I opened the folder. Insurance papers, bank statements, and something else. A printed email. I'd forgotten about it. From Caleb Warren to Ella Rhodes. Subject: when he's not around anymore. I stared at the subject line. The date stamp said it was sent 14 months ago, right around the time of my heart scare. Right when I thought I wouldn't make it to Christmas. My hands didn't shake when I opened it. They should have. But when you've spent years fixing broken machinery, you learn to work with steady hands, even when everything's falling apart. The email was short, sweet, full of plans. The cabin up north. The life insurance payout. The freedom they'd have once I was gone. Out of the picture. Those were Caleb's exact words. Out of the picture. I folded the email back up, put it in the folder, closed the drawer. Then I sat in my kitchen for a long time, listening to the refrigerator hum and thinking about timing. You know what the worst part was? I wasn't even surprised. When you work nights for 12 years, you learn to see in the dark. Not just with your eyes, with instinct. You notice things other people miss. The way Ella started going to the gym more often. The way she stopped asking about my doctor appointments. The way she looked at me like I was already gone. Maybe I'd seen the signs all along. Maybe part of me had already given up too. I just never thought she'd be in such a damn hurry to collect. But here's what Ella didn't know about machines. Sometimes, when they break down, they take other things with them. I found out the truth about timing 3 weeks after Ella left. I was flipping through that same folder, the one with the email, the insurance statements. My old will was in there too. Dated 2 years ago. Back when we still said goodnight to each other. Back when I still thought 16 years of marriage meant something. The will left everything to Ella. The house. The cabin. My pension. Even the truck. Here's the thing about dying. It makes you realize how stupid you've been about living. I called Miles Kent on a Tuesday night. We'd worked construction together 15 years ago, before he got smart and went back to school. Ended up doing estate plans for rich folks until the economy tanked and real money dried up. Now he drives semis for Peterson Trucking and lives on gas station coffee, but his brain still clicks like a lawyer's. He picked up on the second ring. Aaron, Jesus man, heard about the cancer. How you holding up? I need help with something. He didn't ask more, just gave me an address. Miles lived in a duplex about 20 minutes from the warehouse. When I pulled up, he was out on the porch smoking a cigarette, coveralls half-zipped, Peterson Trucking stitched on the pocket. You look like hell, he said. Feel worse. We went inside. His kitchen smelled like burned toast and cheap soap. The table was buried under invoices, legal pads, and half a can of cold chili. He pushed everything aside, made a clear space. I handed him the folder. He didn't say much as he read, just flipped through the papers in silence. The will, the insurance statements, and that email from Caleb. When he got to the end, he leaned back, hands flat on the table. She's already gone, right? Moved in with him last week. Yeah. He tapped the edge of the will. Then why the hell are you leaving her anything? That's what I liked about Miles. No sugarcoating. Just straight talk. What do you mean? I asked. This will, he said, shaking it, makes her rich the day you die. She walks out on you during chemo, shacks up with her boyfriend, and still gets to cash in when you're gone. He shook his head, lips pressed in a hard line. That's not justice, Aaron. That's just stupid. He worked until 2 a.m. Miles knew the law like I knew warehouse machinery, every moving part, every way it could break down. We need a clause, he said, typing fast on his laptop. Spousal abandonment during terminal illness. If she leaves you while you're dying, she gets nothing. I leaned over the table. That a real thing? We can make it one. How do we prove abandonment? Medical records, witness statements. Hell, that email helps too. Shows premeditation. He didn't have to explain it. I knew the value of a good paper trail. But then he looked up from the screen. Here's where it gets interesting, he said. We need a backup beneficiary. Someone to inherit if Ella gets disqualified. He paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Got any kids? Siblings? I shook my head. No family left. You ready? I was about to say the Cancer Foundation. Something clean. Simple. No emotion. Then I remembered. A night 6 weeks ago. Before the divorce papers. Before I knew how deep the betrayal ran. It was 3 a.m., and I was sitting in my truck outside the hospital after a chemo session that went bad, real bad. The kind that makes you question everything. Makes you wonder if the cure's worse than the disease. I had a bottle of sleeping pills in the glove compartment. Been carrying them around for weeks. Just in case. That night, I opened the bottle. Counted them out in my palm. 24 pills. More than enough. Then someone knocked on my window. Sabrina Morgan. 56 years old. Breast cancer survivor. She was getting her 6-month checkup. I'd seen her in the waiting room before. Quiet. Kind eyes. But we'd never spoken. She was holding a thermos. You okay, honey? She asked through the glass. I rolled down the window, slipped the pills back into the bottle as smooth as I could. Just tired, I said. Soup, she said, unscrewing the thermos cap. My grandmother's recipe. Helps with the nausea. She poured the soup into a ceramic cup and handed it to me. Then, without asking, she walked around the front of the truck, opened the passenger door, and got in. Didn't ask permission. Just sat there. I sipped the soup. It was warm. Simple. Honest. We didn't talk much. She told me about her daughter in nursing school. I told her about the warehouse. Normal stuff. Nothing deep. But she stayed. For an hour. She just sat there beside a stranger who was thinking about checking out early. She never knew what she interrupted. I never told her. When I finished the soup, She took the cup back. Same time next week. Yeah, I said. She'd been showing up every week since. Never missed a session. She never asked questions about why Ella stopped coming. She just stayed. Sabrina Morgan, I told Miles, leaning back in the chair, rubbing my eyes. She's getting her chemo treatments too. Friend of yours? He asked. Eyes still on the screen. Something like that. He nodded and typed her name into the document. Okay, he said. So if Ella gets disqualified, everything goes to Sabrina. House, cabin, pension, the works. He pulled out a calculator and started running numbers. How much are we talking about? I asked. Miles didn't say anything at first, just tapped away, doing the math. House value, life insurance, pension fund, that cabin up north. He squinted at the total. About $400,000. Give or take. I let out a low whistle. For 100 grand. That's what 16 years of marriage was worth, he said, on paper. And Ella would have gotten all of it. Just for outliving me. Unless she doesn't, I said. Miles looked up. Exactly. Will this hold up in court? If we do it right? Yeah. He tapped the screen. The abandonment clause is solid. She filed for divorce the day after your first chemo. That's not coincidence. That's calculation. We finished the paperwork as the sun started to rise. Miles printed 3 copies and slid them across the table. Sign each one. I signed. Once, twice, 3 times. He sealed 1 copy in an envelope, wrote addendum A across the front in black marker. What's in there? I asked. Sabrina's name. If the abandonment clause gets triggered, this gets opened. She inherits everything. I nodded and didn't say much else. On the way home, the sky turned from bruised gray to pale gold. I passed the warehouse just as the morning shift was starting. Guys I'd worked with for years trudging in, heads down, ready to move boxes and fix machines. Regular people living regular lives. Ella was different. She'd always wanted more than regular. The cabin was supposed to be our retirement dream. 20 acres on a lake, 2 hours north. Quiet. Peaceful. We bought it 5 years ago with money I'd saved working double shifts through winter storms and summer blackouts. Now it would belong to Sabrina, a woman who handed soup to strangers in hospital parking lots. You know what the funny thing was? I wasn't doing this out of spite. Not really. Ella made her choice. She wanted to feel alive, so she walked away from something dying. That's human nature. I couldn't blame her for that. But Sabrina made a different choice. Every Tuesday for 6 weeks, she chose to sit with someone who had nothing to offer her except company. No promises. No future. Just an hour of stillness in a world that moves too fast. She chose to stay. That's worth something. That's worth everything. Miles called me 3 days later. Papers are filed, he said. The abandonment clause is active as of yesterday. Your doctor signed off on the medical documentation. What happens now? I asked. Now we wait. If Ella tries to claim inheritance after you're gone, the clause kicks in. Everything goes to Sabrina instead. I hung up, sat in my kitchen, looking out at the snow. Ella's coffee maker was gone, but I could still smell her shampoo in the bathroom. Something floral, expensive. The scent clung to the tile like a memory that hadn't gotten the message it was supposed to leave. 16 years of marriage, reduced to legal paperwork and abandonment clauses. But here's what Ella never understood about staying power. It's not about love. Hell, it's not even about loyalty. It's about showing up when showing up is hard. Sabrina showed up. Every damn week. Rain or shine. Sat in that waiting room across from me and made sure I wasn't alone. Didn't ask for anything. Didn't need a reason. Ella showed up too, with divorce papers and a new address. The difference wasn't complicated. One walked toward something difficult. The other walked away from it. Guess which one was about to inherit my life's work? Ella thought she was getting a head start on her new life. What she didn't know was that she'd already lost the race. Some things you can't time. And some things you can't take back. She was about to learn the difference. 6 months later, I was still alive. The doctors called it stable, but declining. I called it borrowed time. Chemo was holding the line, but it wasn't winning the war. Just buying me a few extra pages at the end of the book. Ella, meanwhile, was thriving online. Her Instagram feed looked like a lifestyle magazine. Green smoothies, yoga poses, inspirational quotes about choosing yourself. The comments were full of women cheering her on for finding her strength. Caleb showed up less and less in her posts. Guess the novelty wore off. I didn't follow her account. Didn't need to. Sabrina showed me once during chemo, thinking it might help me understand why Ella left. It didn't. Some people post their healing. Others just heal. It was a Tuesday morning. I was getting my blood drawn, watching the tube fill with something too dark to be called red, when I overheard 2 nurses at the station just outside the room. The IVF billing's getting complicated, one of them said, flipping through a chart. Yeah, the other replied. Insurance lapsed last month, but the procedure was approved in March. I didn't move. Just sat there. Listening. Whose case? The first one asked. Ella Rhodes. Used to be married to the cancer patient in room 4. Room 4. That was me. When was the procedure? March 15th. Right before the insurance expired. Lucky timing. Lucky timing. There it was again. After the appointment, I called the insurance company. Took 3 transfers and 40 minutes on hold, listening to looped piano music and apologies for the wait. But I got the details. Ella had used my insurance to pay for in vitro fertilization. The procedure cost $18,000. Approved 2 days before our divorce was finalized. The donor wasn't listed, but the timing told the story. She'd been planning this for months. You know what hit me hardest? It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the efficiency. She'd used me to pay for a baby with another man, then walked away clean. Like it was a transaction she'd already balanced in her head. That night, I drove up to the cabin. The place looked different in late fall. The trees were stripped bare, the lake frozen at the edges. Silence stretched across the land, not peaceful, surgical, cold and precise. It cut through everything. Ella and I had planned to retire here. Spend our golden years watching the seasons change. That was the dream, anyway. One we paid for with overtime shifts, burnt weekends, and scraped together savings. I built a fire in the old stone hearth. The room warmed slowly, the flames crackling like they were remembering how to be alive. I sat in the leather chair we bought at an estate sale our 3rd year of marriage, back when we used to touch each other without thinking. On the coffee table, I laid out all the paperwork Miles had given me. The revised will, the abandonment clause, addendum A, sealed, Sabrina's name inside like a quiet promise. Then I pulled out my phone, scrolled to Ella's latest post. It was an ultrasound photo, black and white, grainy. An arrow pointed to a little blob in the center like it was treasure. The caption read, "Sometimes the best gifts come from the hardest decisions. New beginnings. Choosing life." 200 likes. 50 comments. All congratulations. Heart emojis. So proud of you. A gallery of strangers cheering for the woman who'd broken me with surgical timing. I stared at the photo. Not in anger, just blank. Like looking at a math problem that doesn't add up no matter how many times you check the numbers. That was the child they'd built while I was dying. Conceived with my money. Carried by my wife. Fathered by the man who called me sir. I reached into my jacket pocket. Pulled out the old bottle of sleeping pills. Still had them. 6 months later. Never used them. Never threw them away either. Just carried them. Like a safety net no one talked about. I opened the bottle. Counted them again. 24 pills. Same as before. But something was different this time. My eyes drifted to the kitchen counter. There, beside the sink, was the ceramic soup cup Sabrina had given me that first night in the hospital parking lot. I'd brought it here last month. Forgot to take it home. It was cream-colored with tiny blue flowers around the rim. Hand-painted. Probably homemade. The kind of thing someone's grandmother would make, careful and patient. I looked at the pills in my palm. Then at the cup. Here's what I realized. Ella wasn't the only one who'd been making choices. I'd been choosing too. Every Tuesday for 6 months. I chose to show up for chemo. Every night, I chose to go home instead of ending it. Every morning, I chose to get up and keep going. Not because I was brave. Not because I had hope. Because some things are worth finishing right. I walked over to the fireplace, bottle in hand. Pulled the cap off. Poured the pills into the flames. They hissed and curled in the heat like dry leaves. Dissolved into smoke. Gone. Not out of strength, out of refusal. I sat back down, pulled out a sheet of paper, and wrote a letter in my careful, steady handwriting. To the boy they built with my name and my money. I was never part of your story. I was just the receipt. I folded the letter. Sealed it in an envelope. Slipped it into the folder with everything else. The will, the clause, addendum A. The next morning, I drove into town and stopped by the drugstore. Picked out a thank you card. Plain white. No flowers. No glitter. No script telling you what to feel. Just blank space for whatever needed to be said. Inside I wrote, "Thank you for making everything so clear." Then I tucked in a copy of the new will. Not the original, just a photocopy. It showed the abandonment clause. The reference to addendum A. I mailed it to Ella's new address. 3 days later, my phone rang. And what the hell is this supposed to mean? Ella's voice snapped through the receiver. Sharp. Fast. The way it used to get when she was frustrated with a design client who didn't know mauve from maroon. "Just wanted to say thanks," I said. "Thanks for what?" "For showing me who you really are." Silence. Then she said, "This whole thing is bullshit. You can't just cut me out because you're bitter. I'm not cutting you out. You cut yourself out. I'll fight this in court. Good luck with that." She hung up. Miles called me that afternoon. "Your ex-wife contacted a lawyer," he said. "They're claiming the abandonment clause is invalid." "Will it hold? With the medical records? The email from her boyfriend?" "IVF timing." He let out a short laugh. "Yeah, it'll hold." She screwed herself with the paper trail. 2 weeks later, Ella started making moves on the cabin. Put it up for sale through a realtor. Posted photos online. Even scheduled a showing. I let her try. But here's the thing about ownership. It's not about possession. It's about control. And I'd never signed the title release. The cabin was still joint property, which meant she couldn't sell it without my signature. When the buyers tried to close, escrow flagged the incomplete paperwork. The sale fell through. She called Miles directly, voice full of that old edge, threatening to sue. He was polite, calm, but clear. The abandonment clause is already active, he told her. The moment you filed for divorce during Aaron's terminal care, you triggered it. The doctor signed off. It's all in black and white. Spousal abandonment during terminal illness. Medical abandonment during cancer treatment. The documentation was bulletproof. Addendum A was sealed. Ready for probate. I asked Miles what happens now. He paused. Now we wait for the inevitable. When you're gone, the will gets read. The clause gets enforced. Everything goes to Sabrina. I drove home through the Minnesota winter, wipers squeaking over a windshield rimmed with ice. The roads were slick and empty. Just me, cold air, and the quiet company of my thoughts. Timing. Choices. The line between justice and revenge. Ella thought she'd outsmarted everyone. Divorced me. Kept the benefits. Started over with a younger man and a new baby. What she didn't realize was that I'd been watching the whole time. Learning her patterns. Understanding her moves. You work a machine long enough, you know when it's about to break down. Ella had been breaking down for months. I just gave her the space to do it completely. She wanted to feel alive. Fine. She was about to feel very alive indeed. By late spring, the cancer had won most of the battles. I could barely walk from the bed to the kitchen without leaning on the walls. Driving to the courthouse wasn't happening. I was too weak to attend my own will reading. Miles came to see me the night before. He brought coffee and legal papers, sat at my kitchen table like we were prepping for another construction job instead of the final act of my life. You sure you don't want to be there? He asked. I've seen enough courtrooms. He nodded, but waited. Besides, I added, Ella might actually speak her mind if I'm not around to intimidate her. Miles laughed. You? Intimidating? You're 90 pounds soaking wet. Dying men make people nervous, I said. Reminds them it's real. The next morning, I stayed home, dozing in my recliner. The light through the window was soft and gray. I listened to the refrigerator hum. The wind tap at the eaves. At 11:47 a.m., the phone rang. It's done, Miles said. His voice sounded different. Satisfied, maybe. Like a job well finished. How'd it go? I asked. You want the play-by-play or just the highlights? Everything. So Miles told me everything. Ella showed up 15 minutes early, he said, wearing black and confidence. Her lawyer looked expensive. Probably costs more an hour than you made in a day at the warehouse. And Sabrina? Already there. Gray cardigan. Hands folded. Sitting next to me like she was waiting for a doctor's appointment instead of inheriting 400 grand. Did they talk to each other? I asked. Not a word. Ella kept checking her phone. Miles said. Sabrina just watched the judge. Caleb? I asked. Didn't show. Smart move. Nothing good could have come from him being there when the music stopped. I leaned back, the old recliner creaking under me. Closed my eyes, picturing it. Judge Harrison started right at 10. Miles went on. Standard language, legal formalities. The kind of words that turn simple things into complicated knots. I could imagine it. Ella sitting upright, probably nodding along like she understood every word. She perked up when the judge got to the inheritance section. Miles said. Then paused. And then, to my spouse, Ella Chambers Rhodes, he slowed it down. I leave nothing. There it was. Miles said the silence was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I imagined it. Her blinking. Her breath catching. Her whole plan crashing in real time. What did the judge say? He explained everything. The abandonment clause. The medical documentation from Dr. Wells. Witness statements. The timeline showing she filed the papers the day after your first chemo. Laid it all out like a blueprint of her betrayal. I didn't ask what Ella's face looked like. I already knew. She sat there like someone had unplugged her brain. Her lawyer tried to object. Miles said, but the paperwork was too clean. Too tight. No leaks. And then came the moment. The one I'd been waiting 8 months to hear about. Judge Harrison opened the sealed envelope. Addendum A. Read the name. Sabrina Morgan. I opened my eyes, stared at the ceiling, let it land like a slow exhale. How did she react? I asked. Like she always does. Quiet. Didn't cry. Didn't gasp. Didn't look for the spotlight. Just lowered her head a little, like someone had handed her a responsibility she didn't ask for, but would carry anyway. That sounded like Sabrina. Taking on weight like it was nothing. And Ella stared at her like she was trying to solve a puzzle. This woman she'd never met. About to inherit everything she thought was hers. Miles told me how her lawyer scrambled. Tried to contest. How the judge explained Sabrina's consistent presence during treatment. The hours she'd spent in that hospital waiting room. The quiet loyalty of showing up. Then came the question. Ms. Morgan, do you accept the inheritance as outlined in this will? Her answer was 2 words. I do. Like a wedding vow. Like a promise. Ella say anything after that? I asked. Miles paused. Justice isn't over, he said. But no, she didn't speak. Just watched Sabrina walk away. He told me Sabrina had looked at Ella once on her way out. Not with spite. Not with triumph. Just once. Then walked out the door like she had nothing to prove. I hung up the phone and sat in my kitchen, thinking about justice. About timing. And the difference between earning something and expecting it. Over the next few days, Miles kept me updated. Ella started posting on social media again. Vague messages. Talk of betrayal. Of stolen futures. But the response wasn't what she expected. Word had gotten out. Cancer patient's wife files for divorce the day after chemo. Moves in with trainer. Uses dying husband's insurance for IVF with boyfriend. Her inspirational posts were met with silence. Her calls for support went unanswered. People understand abandonment. Miles told me over the phone one night. They know what it means to walk away when someone needs you. 2 weeks later, a local blogger picked up the story. Small publication. Maybe 5,000 readers. But stories like this, they travel. The headline said it all. She left him after chemo. He left it all to the woman who stayed. Ella tried to regain control of the narrative. Posted her side. Talked about toxic relationships, emotional abuse, choosing yourself. But nobody bought it. The timeline was too clean. Too cruel. Miles called me to tell me the post had gone viral. Her comment section's a wasteland, he said. Even her friends are keeping quiet. I didn't feel vindicated. Just still. Here's what happened to my inheritance. Sabrina used part of it to start the Staying Kind Fund. Grants for caregivers. Support for families dealing with terminal illness. Help for people who choose to stay when staying gets hard. She turned the cabin into a retreat center. A place where exhausted nurses and family caregivers could go to breathe, to rest, to remember why they do what they do. Miles drove up there last month to check on the renovations. She kept the stone fireplace, he said. Updated the kitchen. Added a screened porch that looks out over the lake. He paused. She's making it into something beautiful, he added. Something that honors what it represents. I didn't say anything for a while. What's that? I finally asked. Commitment, he said. The kind that doesn't break down when things get difficult. Last week, Miles told me Ella drove by the cabin. She didn't stop, he said. Just slowed down. Sabrina was on the new porch, reading in a rocking chair. Ella sat in the car for a moment, maybe thinking about stopping up the path. Explaining. Apologizing. Demanding something. Sabrina looked up from her book, saw the car. She didn't wave. Didn't acknowledge her at all. Just went back to reading. Ella drove away. That's the difference, I told Miles. People who stay don't need an audience for their commitment. And the ones who leave. Miles asked. They spend their whole lives performing for approval they'll never get. Tonight, I'm sitting in my kitchen. For maybe the last time. The house feels different. Lighter, somehow, like it already knows it's moving toward better hands. Sabrina's hands. Ella wanted to feel alive. She got her wish. She also got the knowledge that walking away cost her everything. Sabrina never asked for anything. Just showed up, every Tuesday, with soup and silence. Some rewards you earn without trying. Others, you lose by trying too hard. I never intended this as revenge. Not really. I just wanted to make sure the right person got what mattered. The woman who stayed when staying was hard. The woman who sat with a stranger in a hospital parking lot at 3 a.m. The woman who understood that sometimes the best thing you can give someone is your presence. No questions asked. Ella ran toward feeling alive. Sabrina walked toward someone who was dying. Guess which choice built something worth inheriting? Tomorrow, Miles is driving me to the cabin one last time. I want to see what Sabrina's done with the place. Want to sit by that fireplace and know that good people will keep warming themselves there long after I'm gone. Ella once said she needed to feel alive. Me? I just needed to die right. And thanks to Sabrina, I think I can. My final days have been quiet. Spent in the house Ella and I shared for 16 years. The doctors say weeks. Maybe a month. The cancer has done what it came to do. Spread everywhere it could. No more treatments. No more hope. Just time. Miles helped me set up a hospital bed in the living room, near the big window that looks out over the backyard. From there, I can watch the seasons shift. Spring is pushing its way into the Minnesota winter. Snow melting. Patches of green trying to break through. The world is waking up, while I shut down. Most days, I keep a small fire going in the fireplace. Ella used to complain about it. The mess, the smoke, the ash. Now I burn what I want. The mail still comes. Bills I'll never pay. Legal updates from Miles. Nothing that matters. Then on a Tuesday that felt like every other Tuesday, something different arrived. A letter. Addressed to me in careful handwriting. Return address, University of Minnesota, nursing program. A dorm room. I opened it slowly. My hands shake now, not from emotion. From the disease, chewing through the last of me. Dear Mr. Rhodes, my name is Jennifer Morgan. I'm Sabrina's daughter. I'm in my second year of nursing school. My mom never knew why you left her everything. She keeps saying it doesn't make sense, that she barely knew you. I stopped reading for a second, eyes resting on the ink. It was neat. Earnest. The kind of writing people use when they still believe their words can make a difference. But I think I do understand. She told me about the nights she'd find you in the hospital parking lot. How you always seemed to be carrying something heavy. How she'd sit with you until you looked ready to drive home. She said you never talked much. Just accepted her soup and let her stay. She stayed, even when it was hard. Even when it didn't make sense. I want to stay too. For people like you. For people who need someone to sit with them in parking lots at 3 a.m. Thank you for seeing who my mom really is. Thank you for making sure staying means something. Jennifer. I folded the letter carefully, my hands trembling a little, not from emotion, just the weakness that never left anymore. I set it gently on the coffee table, right next to the ceramic soup cup Sabrina had given me that first night in the parking lot. The cup had followed me home from the hospital, cream-colored with tiny blue flowers, hand-painted by someone who understood that small gestures matter most when everything else is falling apart. It was the only thing I'd kept from those Tuesdays besides my meds. I picked up the cup, held it in my hands for a moment, then placed Jennifer's letter inside. A message in a bottle, meant for no one and everyone. Then I reached for the small envelope I'd carried for months. The one I'd sealed at the kitchen table back in October after learning about the IVF. To the boy I'll never meet. The letter I'd written to Ella's child. The boy she'd built with my name, my money, and another man's DNA. He'd grow up never knowing that a dying stranger had paid for his existence. I held the envelope over the fire. Not in anger. Not in bitterness. Just closure. The paper caught quick, burned bright for a few seconds, then curled, blackened, and disappeared into ash and smoke. The words vanished, like they'd never existed. Maybe that was better. That boy didn't need to carry the weight of what his mother had done. Didn't need to know he was born from betrayal and insurance fraud. He could just be a kid. Ella's kid. Caleb's kid. Whatever story they decided to tell him. I wasn't part of that story anyway. Never had been. I was just the receipt, like I'd written. But Sabrina was part of a different story. A better one. The fire settled into a steady rhythm. Outside, the snow was melting faster now. Spring coming, whether I was here to see it or not. I closed my eyes. Listened to the silence of the empty house. Real silence. The kind you only find when you're not afraid anymore. Ella said she needed to feel alive. All those months ago, standing in my hospital room with divorce papers in her hand, heels clicking like a countdown. She wanted to start over. Me? I just needed to die right. Some people run from endings. Others walk toward them, with purpose. Ella ran. Sabrina walked. I chose my ending the same way I'd lived my life. Quietly. Deliberately. Without asking for applause. Miles would come by tomorrow with the final paperwork. The house would go to Sabrina, too. Along with everything else. She'd probably sell it. Use the money for the Staying Kind fund. That was fine. Good houses should go to good people. She said she needed to feel alive. I just needed to die right. Now, 3 months later. The cabin was quiet in the mornings. Sabrina liked it that way. She'd rise before sunrise, wrap herself in the same gray cardigan she'd worn to the courthouse, and drink her tea on the screened porch overlooking the lake. The new rocking chairs creaked softly on the wood planks Aaron had once stained himself. She kept the place simple. No plaques. No dedications. Just warmth. The Staying Kind Fund had already helped 8 families, some with travel costs to reach treatment centers, others with respite care for exhausted spouses who refused to walk away. She never told them where the money came from, just that it was meant for them. Inside the cabin, in a small glass case by the fireplace, sat one item, a ceramic soup cup with blue flowers and a folded piece of paper inside it. She never touched it, just dusted around it gently. One weekend in June, Jennifer came up to visit. She had just finished her hospital rotation. She walked through the cabin slowly, touching the old stone wall, the beams, the worn wood of the kitchen table. He really left it all to you, she said, half in wonder. Sabrina smiled. No, he left it to someone who stayed. They sat on the porch for a long while that day, watching the breeze ripple across the water. Before they left, Jennifer stood in the center of the great room and whispered quietly toward the fire. Thank you, Mr. Rhodes, for seeing her, for staying long enough to change everything. And then they closed the door behind them. Inside, the cabin held its silence. Not empty, not lonely, just full of something that doesn't break down. Not when it matters most. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.